yesterday, also talking about his idea, for those that are seen perhaps using drugs on the street, being able to be brought in and go through a process and allowing officers to get back on the street quicker, and then providing additional resources and different things like that. I think that's an idea that the governor will be interested in.
I think one of the reasons that Daniel Lurie was elected was because the voters thought that the previous office holder, London Breed, was not doing enough to address the problem of people on the street, and sometimes people on the street will commit crimes or have open drug use. And obviously, the city has battled for years, and it seems like they were so willing to change leadership to see if they could fix this problem. It's going to be interesting to see what the governor will say and what Mr. Lurie will say. Here comes Daniel Lurie now to speak on this issue. We're going to take this live on Take Two.
It's an honor to be with you. Governor Newsom, it is always good to have you in San Francisco. Mr. Mayor, in our city, we are changing our approach to homelessness to get people off the street and on a path to stability. We launched our Breaking the Cycle plan to bring together health services, social services, law enforcement, and emergency responders. We combined 9 different neighborhood outreach teams into one, breaking down silos and increasing shelter placements by 40% this past year. We passed new legislation to move families living in RVs into housing and restore our public spaces. Just this past year, we opened 600 new treatment-focused beds so people on the street can get inside and get help. And in December, we reached a record low number of encampments, down 44% over the prior year. But we can't do this alone. The resources provided by the state are crucial, whether it's Prop 1, HAP dollars, or funding to make sure our freeway off-ramps and on-ramps are cleaned. So, Governor, I want to thank you for making that possible this past year. You are providing us with real money that funds real solutions for people exiting homelessness throughout our community. Let me give you one example. As a city, we have received nearly $187 million in HAP funding. HAP funding covers almost 1,000 of our beds. That means over 1,000 people every night have a roof over their heads because of this investment. That's transformative. Now, Governor, I can't promise that my fellow mayors and I won't ask for more support and more resources for our cities. But none of this would be possible. None of this without your support would be possible, and your leadership and commitment on this issue of homelessness and our behavioral health crisis. We also understand that breaking the cycle of homelessness, addiction, and behavioral health isn't always just about funding. It's about transforming how we use that funding to deliver better outcomes for people in crisis and our broader community. That's what we're doing here in San Francisco, fundamentally changing the system instead of just pouring more money into something that's broken. We have a lot more work to do, but with the governor's partnership, I'm confident that we here in San Francisco are on the right track. And with strong partnership and continued investment, we will continue to move forward. Thank you. Let's go 49ers. And I would like to introduce the California Health Secretary, Kim Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Great to be with you. You just heard the phenomenal progress being made here in San Francisco, and I just want to speak to the progress we're making together, attributing to the intentional integration of health, human services, and housing together in support of this effort. Through California's Mental Health for All efforts, we are aiming to make sure every Californian, especially people who have the hardest time getting help, can get high-quality mental health and substance use treatment when and where they need it. The plan, as you just heard, is supported and being implemented here by major investments, new policies, and close partnerships with local governments, health plans, care providers, people with lived experience, tribal nations, and community community organizations. The state is adding more treatment services and housing, growing and diversifying the workforce that is supporting every individual and making care more culturally and linguistically responsive. Under Governor Newsom's leadership, through billion-dollar investments like the voter-approved Proposition 1 and initiatives like CalAIM focused on the social determinants of health, Care Court, California has developed a nation-leading continuum of care to serve individuals at every stage of life, including those who are experiencing or at risk of homelessness. This Friendship House was recently awarded $31.4 million from Proposition 1 Behavioral Health Continuum Infrastructure Program to help build a Village San Francisco Wellness Center to house 60 residential substance use disorder beds, 107 mental health outpatient spaces, and 100 wellness spaces. These are spaces and places to heal. This is part of a larger effort where last year alone, the California Department of Health Care Services awarded over $3 billion in funds from Proposition 1 to build 4,236 residential beds and 18,875 treatment spaces. We are on track and actually surpassing our goal of where we thought we would be at this time, and we're looking forward to awarding more funds, the remaining $1.1 billion later this year. I'm grateful to our state, our local partners, to everyone advancing mental health for all, and to Governor Newsom for his leadership. Together we are transforming communities. And it is now my pleasure to introduce my partner and a phenomenal leader for the state of California, Secretary Tamika Moss.
Thank you, Secretary Johnson. Good morning. It feels good to gather for good news, doesn't it? Well, today is a good day. We are announcing the awards of more than $420 million to our HAP program awardees who are making a difference in their local communities every day. You heard from the mayor the incredible work that San Francisco is doing to address housing and homelessness in our communities. We are seeing that work happen all across the state. It's programs like HAP that allow local jurisdictions to apply culturally responsive programs and services and housing for those that need it the most. We are often asked, is California on the right track? Do we know what solutions work to address our housing and homelessness crisis? Well, folks, the answer is yes. It is evidenced by the work of this program. It is evidenced by what is happening here at Friendship House, and it is exactly what leadership looks like. This governor, this legislators investing in programs like HAP that allow communities to not only look at investments, but also to track outcomes, to use data and evidence to ensure that every single dollar that is being spent on solutions that work. The Housing and Community Development Department hosts dashboards that track every HAP grantee's progress toward their regional goals. These are transparent accountability metrics that allows communities to understand how these resources are being used and making sure that we are held accountable for our collective goals. That is what leadership looks like. Despite the federal headwinds that we are facing, California shows up. It is this governor and this legislature that continues to invest in solutions that work. We also have our tribal HAP program that is open and receiving applications. These resources allow our federally recognized tribes to invest in addressing housing and homelessness in their own communities. It takes a village, y'all, to be able to have the kind of impact that California deserves. And guess what? It's working. We are seeing results, and we cannot take our foot off the gas if we are going to ensure that every single Californian has a safe and affordable place to call home. It is now my great pleasure to introduce our governor of the great state of California, Gavin Newsom.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you for the privilege of being back here. I was looking over as you were speaking and looked back. I thought I saw Mayor Lurie with Helen, but I realized that was me 20 years ago before the gray hair and you know, you'll be there soon, Mr. Mayor. But it's great to be back here. And I say back here because the journey with Helen goes back to the time I was a county board of supervisors when I was asked by then Mayor Willie Brown if I'd be willing to go on a substance abuse treatment trip with a few leaders from San Francisco to talk about the issues around treatment on demand, talk about methadone maintenance, talk about some novel strategies that San Francisco was trying to lead. And so we found ourselves as strangers in North Carolina, and then came back as friends. And so it's wonderful to be here, the Friendship House, decades later, and to see the progress, not just the promotion, but the progress and the life-changing work that you highlighted so effectively, including reflecting your own journey. That is the vision of Helen's and the vision of all of those remarkable leaders that are here supporting this remarkable community. We recognize, though, we have a lot more work to do. And in that spirit, we're back to highlight some progress, to promote our next steps. You heard a number of speakers highlight some of that progress. You've heard the remarkable progress here in San Francisco in particular, across the spectrum of issues. Yesterday, the mayor laid out in his State of the City a lot of that progress in every key category. Extraordinary progress is being made in San Francisco, and it's not just the data that's presented, it's the sense of place. People are feeling it again. They're experiencing it again, and that's the most difficult, perhaps, thing to move, and that's perception. And no one has done that more effectively than Mary Lurie. So I just want to congratulate you on that remarkable leadership in this last year, and just keep it up on behalf of all of us throughout the state of California. But our state of mind is now anchored on promoting even more progress. What we highlighted just a few days ago was something we haven't been able to highlight in a decade and a half in California. In fact, you look back even decades prior, we had not seen a reduction in unsheltered homeless. The issue on homelessness is focused on unsheltered. We could talk about people that are sheltered, people that are housed. That's actually something to promote. But unsheltered homelessness is something to address. And we saw a 9%, almost 10% decline in unsheltered homelessness throughout the state of California with our 30 COCs that announced their progress. So we're seeing these investments paying off. It's been a flywheel. I get people's frustration. We all intimately understand that frustration, but we are seeing real progress. And we are investing in what we know works. And one of the areas of investment that we will continue to support is our HAP program, which in 2019 was novel. $500 million was invested in that space. With today's announcement, an additional $419 million for our HAP 6 distribution. We total now close to $4.5 billion. The state of California has provided cities and counties and COCs in discretionary funds to support their local efforts. Again, the state had no vision. The state had no plan. The state was not involved in the issue of housing, mental health, and homelessness. Just 7 years ago, we recognize our responsibility, and we recognize the imperative of partnerships, and we continue to make those investments. By the way, there's an additional $340 million we'll be distributing in the next few months as well under the HAP 6 program. But one of the things we also are promoting is accountability. And the mayor and I have talked a lot about this, and he hasn't been shy about not only supporting that, but advocating for more accountability. He highlighted encampments. One of the critical components of the HAP 6 distribution is a requirement to address the issue of encampments, a requirement that is new in the HAP distribution. There is no distribution of funds unless there's strategies and plans to address the issues of encampments on the streets and sidewalks of our cities all across this state. There's also accountability and requirement that you be in compliance with the housing element in your respective cities. And I understand the friction of that intimately. My former role as a county supervisor, even more in some respects than as mayor at the time. But we got to be serious about the supply-demand imbalance in the states. The original sin, our inability to get out of our own way and produce enough housing. And that's foundational and fundamental. It's directly connected to the crisis of homelessness in the state. That is now a requirement for distribution of funds. It's also a requirement that there's accountability on the utilization of the prior funds, and that you're actually investing those funds. You're not just hoarding those funds, which has been the case in some cities and counties that have sat on tens of millions of dollars for years and years and years, and yet sat there, complained about the situation, and demanded even more money. In this new round, we're demanding more accountability and transparency in that space. We also, as was highlighted, are investing now in the next frontier. In 1959, we had 37,000 beds for our behavioral health system in the state of California. 37,000 beds. In 2023, we were down to 5,500. 37,000 in 1959, 5,500 in 2023, with a population twice as large in 2023 as the population in the 1960s. Dumb as we want to be. It was a bipartisan endeavor to move away from state hospitals, a bipartisan endeavor that was designed to then begin to invest in community alternatives, but those investments never took shape. So we are now shape-shifting with the overwhelming opportunity that Proposition 1 presents. It was 18 months ago that passed, the fastest distribution of bond funds in California history. As was stated, up to 70% now of those dollars locked in, lined up for projects just like this. That's the why we are back here. $31.4 million will go from Proposition 1 to support the project you see behind me. It's about rehabbing, acquiring, and building back that system. 4,200, you heard, 4,236 locked and unlocked beds. That money has now been distributed. Those dollars are now lined up with SECRA reforms that were part of what the voters approved. We're not doing business as usual. So we're very proud of that $6.38 billion bond. We're very proud of the $31.4 million that is supporting this project. We're very proud of those 4,236 units that are now in the queue and getting lined up. And we're very proud of the progress cities like San Francisco, cities like LA and San Diego, other beneficiaries of HAP 6 distribution of funds are making in this space. And so I thank all of you for allowing me back in this room to be here and share this space with all of you to address the most vexing, challenging, and most meaningful issue of our time. And I'll close on that because you began on that, the human side of this. And I just want to acknowledge everyone's journey is unique. Everyone's expression is unique. And that's what makes this so challenging. One size does not fit all. And so the issues for the Native communities are unique and distinctive. And it's incredibly important, as Christina Snyder and others remind me all of the time, that our strategies reflect the diversity within our state, the unique needs and characteristics, but also, as defined, final words, in that frame community. People should not be struggling alone, nor can they necessarily recover alone. And so it takes, you said it, a village, but it also takes people willing to be members of that community. And so for all of the caregivers and counselors and support staff also supported with $2.4 billion in Proposition 1, I just want to thank you for your example and your inspiration as well. With that, I have two things to say. Number one, the mayor has to be mayor, so he has to go. Number two, we're here to answer all the questions you may have had for him and any questions you may have for me as well. Sure. Good to see you.
Governor, the progress you're having today is a bit of an outlier. Those numbers have risen every other year of the governorship. Driving that steady increase, and why is it taking so long to see progress?
I'm tremendously proud of the progress we're making. Before I got here, between 2015 and 2019, we saw almost 52% increase in unsheltered homelessness. We've been real progress in the last few years. It was 0.45% last year increase. And I know that you guys highlighted that, and a lot of the headlines reflected the fact that the nation had an 18.13% increase in homelessness last year. California 7%, but 0.45% on unsheltered, which was lower than 44 states. And I thought that was important last year because it marked a moment of progress, and we said more is coming. And this year, we're seeing that progress continue. So it's a flywheel. Decades and decades of neglect coming from the state level. That's not been the case the last number of years. We can mark that progress in the last few years. In particular, we can also mark the challenges that we faced and this nation faced during COVID, during those peak moments in 2021, 22, where we saw a lot of challenges, particularly as it relates to what was happening on the streets and sidewalks all across the United States, including here in California. And so we were able to break down the barriers, be it issues around Grant Pass, issues around conservatorship reforms, issues around new strategies like Care Court, aligning our strategies around CalIM and the other Medicaid reforms that we've advanced in this state, the mobile efforts we've had for reimbursement, all these areas. Home key, room key, things we've highlighted. And we're finally seeing the stacking of all those things, not one particular issue or initiative, but all of them starting to stack together, producing real progress.
But with that 9% figure,
I'm sorry.
Governor, how is accountability measured by the state? What specific metrics? Are we talking point-in-time counts, exits to housing, retention? How is the state going to make sure that the funding?
Yeah, it's the annual HUD process that the COCs, there's 44, 30 that just provided their information, the 14 that work on a different schedule, and so it's the pick count. It's the well-established pick count, which, by the way, is the most imperfect count you can get. Let me establish that as well. No one's naive about that. It's how many volunteers you have, what the weather is like. It's, there's been a lot of, so it's an imperfect process, and I'm not naive about that. But nor am I naive about the progress that you're seeing in cities like San Francisco. It's real, and that's reflected in the numbers. Not in every part of the state, but in most parts of California. And so we just want to keep that going. The issue about behavioral health is the issue, though, that needs to be addressed, and that's what we're doing, flooding the zone with a $6.38 billion, and also doing something that's incredibly important. You'll be writing and talking a lot more about this. In July of this year, we're reforming our Behavioral Health Services Act, and we're redirecting about $1 billion a year, annual appropriation, minimum commitment to cities and counties to house folks under the Behavioral Health Services Act, particularly people that are duly diagnosed with drug or alcohol addictions, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and the like. So the eligibility requirements have changed. The shift of funding to prioritize homelessness and housing and those that are most chronic and in need will be changed in July. And the big part of it, first time in state's history, I can't make up for 50 years, but we were able to get progress and support despite opposition through the voters by requiring a single plan in every county in California. So rather than 88 plans in LA County, one single plan to integrate all of these funding sources that has an auditing component and is transparent. And finally, if you want to see the details, go to accountability.ca.gov. That should be right up here on this thing, accountability.ca.gov, and I encourage you to do so because it will answer your question with specificity in every county in California. You'll see where they are in conservatorship reform, where they are in Care Court, where they are in terms of the pick count, where they are in terms of the housing compliance and homelessness, where they are on the arena goals. I can go on, but it's the first site the state has ever put forth to lay out accountability on state dollars.
Just to get some clarity on the 9% figure that you've been sharing, that in the state of the state and then here. It's my understanding San Francisco is actually not included in that. I'm not saying that housing or homelessness is down.
I wish it was. It'd be lower.
Well, so my question is, what does that 9% figure represent? Does it include Sacramento, where homelessness is? I feel at least people feel like it's still very much a problem. San Diego, Los Angeles. Like, what is that 9% figure?
Well, I was answering her question and specifically referenced where it was coming from, the 30 COCs that provide data under the annual pick count to housing and urban development. So that's precisely. Well, the COCs incorporate the cities and counties, so they are the actual collecting body that provides that information to HUD. Yeah.
Do you have figures yet on overall or shelters?
That's what we're waiting for. We're waiting. This is interesting as well. Usually the federal government comes out with these numbers in December. For whatever reason, they've delayed these numbers. Trust but verify. We'll be stress testing what they put out, and we've stress tested the 30 COCs that have provided these numbers in a very transparent way and an accountable way. And I imagine the overall numbers would likely go up if we're successful, because more people by definition that are housed, that means less people are unsheltered. And so it's one of those numerics, depends on your point of view, what you want to promote. You want a point of view of pessimism, or point of view of optimism. For me, the unsheltered is the very optimistic numeric, and it's the one we focus our attention on.
Governor, a couple questions on your budget proposal, especially when it comes to immigrant taxes. One is that there's basically out of your proposal, there's going to be a number of differences among immigrants and what coverage levels they may have. Those who are legal, who are refugees, asylees, will be losing their full scope Medi-Cal, while others who may not have documentation and signed up before December 31st will retain their full scope. How do you justify that kind of difference, and is there anything that can be done? There's a lot of advocates who say you're creating kind of a two-tier system, three-tier system when it comes to Medi-Cal. And then the second question being, your budget, according to your finance director, assumes that the state will be applying work requirements to undocumented Medi-Cal recipients, even though that's not required in the federal legislation. Can you explain that?
So, multiple things are happening at the same time, which you know well. You have H.R. 1, the big beautiful bill, the requirements that are set forth in that process that have a lot of criteria and considerations that need to be put in place, including work requirements. I know you're separate. You had a separate conversation on that across the spectrum of supports. State of California has advanced a number of programmatic expansions that no other state in the nation has expanded. We put some brakes on that last year. On that expansion as it relates to capping the enrollment because we needed to do so in order to maintain our fiscal prudence, to balance the budget, which we're statutorily required to do, which is the budget we put forth just a few weeks ago, or a week or so ago, to the legislature. In May, and I've made this point the last 2 years, and I'll reinforce it, the budget means little at this moment, means very little. I'm an expert on this. The volatility that we're experiencing with the federal government, the cuts, the lawsuits, the uncertainty is unprecedented in California's history. We anticipate about $1.1 billion in cuts to Medi-Cal under H.R. 1 in this fiscal year in the budget that I'm promoting. About $300 million as it relates to SNAP benefits, CalFresh benefits, so about $1.4 billion. But there's also a lot of other conditions that need to be considered, particularly as it relates to our litigation posture. You may have seen on mental health dollars, the president tried to suspend all behavioral health funding to the states. He then backed off. That was just this week, just highlighting the uncertainty. Did the same thing in blue states just for child care. The uncertainty is unprecedented. May is the real budget process. And we made that clear just a few days ago. That said, we've been benefited by $42.3 billion of additional revenue that we did not project last year. Another $2.9 billion that was not part of the $42.3 billion that was in the December revenue forecast, which will be adding, be part of what May represents. We'll see what happens in January, February, March, April. And then we'll put out a budget that reflects the concerns that you've highlighted, that have been expressed, and we'll see what we're able to achieve. But no state in America is doing more for our diverse communities in the state of California, period, full stop. No one comes close. No administration has done more to expand full coverage under Medicaid than this administration for our diverse communities, documented and undocumented. And I've been criticized. There's networks that have built careers, people that have built careers out of criticizing my advocacy for that support. And if you think I overstate, just rerun the tape just from this morning. I think the President of the United States himself was on a friendly show highlighting some of that advocacy. So we'll work through this as we always do, and we'll try to do our best to balance our values and priorities, but also balance the budget. There are three things, and I'll close on this topic of budget. It's not just Medicaid. Very proud of the work we've done in home support services. It's a big cost driver. DDS, big cost driver. Very proud of the work we've done in that space. Those are three areas where we have had real and honest conversations with the legislature, and those conversations continue to be advanced as it relates to structural issues that we'll have to address and will need to be reflected in the May revise.
And the work requirements, is that a cost issue?
Work requirements, we'll work through that process with the legislature and finance.
Thank you for taking the time. I apologize for off-topic question. You did mention the president of the United States.
A lot of these were off topic, nothing to apologize for.
Let me quickly ask you about your Ben Shapiro podcast yesterday at the 1 hour, 9 minute mark.
I haven't seen it, but I was part of it. Thanks.
As we approach the 1 year mark of the president becoming the 47th president, what do you like
I know some of you have accused me of drinking out of plastic bottles as an offensive act, but this was just offered to me, so forgive me, Father. I sinned. Anyway, that's for my friends at the, whatever, you know who you are. Country. Yeah.
You asked him what grade would he give the president 1 year? So let me ask you, as we approach Tuesday, January 20th, what grade would you give the president?
Good.
Second question is from Kron.
Oh, what grade? AAA plus? Was that what Trump said about his performance? Yeah.
What grade would you
Oh,
give
thanks.
it?
Yeah.
And then from Kron.
I'm a tougher grader.
Kron for San Francisco was on a ride along with the California Highway Patrol. The agency is now enforcing English language proficiency for truck drivers. Mr. Governor, what is your reaction?
On that issue, there's a lot of back and forth between the administration, Secretary Duffy's office, my office, on the new rules and regulations that were advanced by the Trump administration recently in that space.
Listening now as California Governor Gavin Newsom is in San Francisco, the city where he grew up. He used to be mayor. Actually, first he was supervisor of San Francisco, then mayor, and of course now he heads the state. He is in his final year as governor of California. He is speaking on an issue that he has been focused on from the very start. I remember 20 years ago when he was heading San Francisco, he started programs in that city to help people who are homeless, and here we are, the governor speaking for the state. He was joined by San Francisco Mayor Daniel Lurie. The two leaders announced the next steps in the state's process of addressing homelessness and the mental health crisis. The governor called homelessness the most vexing issue that our state faces, and he said people should not be struggling alone. The governor pointed to some encouraging numbers, said he was proud of the progress that our state has made. When we saw him speak live, I think it was last week, he issued his State of the State address. We had it for you live actually right around this time of the morning, and he was mentioning a 9% drop in what he said was unsheltered homelessness in California. Now he is referencing the big change that happened right before the pandemic and the 5 years since then, and he says that he is making efforts to reverse that. It was starting from 2019 to 2024, so essentially right there, the pandemic time. He noted that our state saw a 52% increase in homelessness, and the governor is sort of working to sort of claw that back. He referenced Proposition 1, passed by California voters, meant to fund projects such as Project Home Key and others that aim to get people who are unsheltered into stable housing, at first temporary and then, of course, more permanent. Many political watchers, of course, and as we just, we pulled out of the conversation a minute ago when the governor started reacting to the president's words, many people say that California Governor Gavin Newsom is, in fact, positioning himself for a possible run for the White House. This, of course, is his last year as governor because he's being termed out. Many watchers say that homelessness is one of the biggest issues that his critics will hammer him on, even more so than they have, because, of course, the majority, well, more people who are homeless live in California than in any other state nationwide. Some people say that in a State of the State address, the governor was speaking to Washington and people all across the country, not just Californians. And some people might make the same argument here about this address. So again, we're going to take a quick pause. We're still monitoring what the governor and San Francisco Mayor Daniel Lurie have to say. We're watching that here in the newsroom. And we are going to come back with something that's happening right here in Oakland, encouraging news, as the Oakland Police Department is set to graduate its academy class, the first in more than a year. So we'll go straight live to Oakland. We'll be right back here, 10:36 on a busy Friday. Stay with us.